Oh, I've been playing guitar since I was a little kid, since probably I was about 7 or 8. So that's a long time. I think at some point every kid wants a guitar, and I got a guitar and took to it pretty well. I did have an uncle that was a very good singer and guitar player. I didn't get to see him very often. Really, probably as a kid, I can really only remember one time, but it was pretty influential the one time he came to our house and played. And he played kind of old early country and jazz and country blues kind of stuff. And I actually have his guitar now. And then when I got to college, I played guitar through high school and just pop stuff, whatever my sister was listening to on her records, Neil Young and John Prine and just that kind of stuff. And then I got to college, and a guy that lived down the hall from me played traditional music, and I had heard it like on the Andy Griffith show. When the Darlin family came down from the mountains, and I really liked it, but I never really knew anybody that played that kind of music. And so in college, I was playing, and this guy said, "Hey, why don't you come down here?" And he invited me out to a party at his brother's house, and the whole family had come up, and his brother and dad both played. And they had a bluegrass band, and his dad was a really good guitar player. And so that kind of got me all fired up about that kind of stuff. He turned me on to some real good guitar players, recordings, and then that summer, so my summer of my freshman year of college, I went home and I bought a much nicer guitar than what I had, and bought some albums and started learning. These a guy named Tony Rice, who, if you're a bluegrass guitar player, he's the god, and one of them anyway. And so I started learning that stuff, and then when I came back to school the next year, I could play with Joe and all these, his buddies. And Joe asked me to play with him at Mountaineer Week one night. Their guitar player couldn't make it, and he called me at the last minute and said, "Hey, we need a guitar player. Can you fill in?" And then, so I went and played on stage for my very first time and was nervous as heck. And it all worked out. And I'd been interested in the fiddle. I knew that I had a very distant great uncle or something, my mom's, great uncle or something like that, somebody I never knew, that she recalled as playing fiddle, and she liked that when she was a kid and growing up on the farm where she was, that she really liked his fiddle playing. And I thought, well, it'd be kind of neat to learn to play the fiddle. So I borrowed a fiddle from my friend Joe, and I couldn't do anything with it. And then I called my mom and said, "Oh, who's got Uncle, Granddaddy Rose's fiddle? Is that thing still around?" And she called her cousin and said, I think it's at her house." And we wound up tracking it down, and I got that fixed up and started trying to learn how to play. I'm largely self-taught on the guitar. I did take I took about a year of lessons that got me started, and I couldn't stand it. It was just, I played piano. I was just pretty musical anyway, so I taught myself a bunch of chords. But looking back on it, the lessons were helpful. I just didn't like them at the time, because the old guy would sit there and strum chords, and I would just pick out Camptown races or whatever. But it did teach me the notes, which I realize now. Fiddle, I just started teaching myself, and then I got to where I could note some tunes. I could play some tunes, but I couldn't really play them well with the bow. And so I went and took a class from Jerry Mills and learned what to do with the bow. The music sometimes is really almost more of a vehicle just for getting together and chatting. Sometimes you'll say, "All right, so let's quit talking and play a tune and play a tune, and then you'll talk for another half hour, and then you'll play another tune and talk for a half hour." Oftentimes the talk is about the tune. It can get kind of, if you're not a musician or not into that, you can, all right, I don't really need to hear any more about who played that tune and where it came from and whose variation that was. And there's this whole kind of lineage of, it's like, a provenance of the tune, where it came from and who played it and who's playing it right and who's not playing it right. It gets kind of wacky at times.